Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. We continue our conversation with Pastor Beth Seifert and Pastor John Grope from Pittsburgh Lutheran United Ministries. And it's my understanding from what you said that the two of you have been very instrumental in helping to bring this cooperation about, that you've sort of brought your congregations together and added a few along the way. Could you say a few words about that and about the support that you've received from our synod and from the lay people in your congregations in that cooperation?
I've been in parish ministry in Pittsburgh for 30 years in the same parish. And one of the things that I was noting in the mid-90s going into the new millennium was that with the demographic decline that's been affecting the Pittsburgh area for over 30 years, it was finally starting to really affect our congregations. We had such a nice core group of seniors, people who were in their 50s or 60s 30 years ago, many of them who lost their jobs in the mills or who were near retirement, who were not going to change location with the demographics movement that was taking place at that time. And I noted that those people were not going to be with us much longer. And they continued to provide the core of our ministry, even as new members moved in and moved out. Our neighborhoods were in decline. We were struggling to do ministry in very different settings with more transient populations, people that needed our ministries, but would not be able to provide the resources, whether it be human resources or monetary resources to maintain the ministry. And as I was looking at this problem, I thought surely there has to be a way to help these congregations in these neighborhoods continue to exist. I was not a fan of consolidation or of mergers for the simple reason that once a congregation moves out of a community, you not only lose that faith community in that place, but you lose the contact with the community. And there were a lot of very good ministries going on in these neighborhoods. In fact, people were saying, if it were not for the church, if it were not for the couple of churches here, this community would be lost. The schools are gone, the commercial districts are gone, we've lost everything. The only thing that's providing any kind of stability or continuity in our neighborhoods are the churches. And so as I was looking at this problem, the major financial burden on the congregations, aside from the expenses of the buildings themselves, was the cost of a pastor. With medical costs going up, it was becoming less and less likely that these congregations, as John had mentioned, could afford a full-time pastor. Neither of us had been paid the recommended synodical minimums for years, and we just knew that once we were gone, that the congregations would not be able to have a full-time pastor. So something had to be done. And I knew that John had a history of working in a cooperative setting. And so I called him up and I said, hey, John, let's have lunch. And I said to him, John, I need to pick your brain. I said, you know, do you think that some kind of a model like what you were involved in Indiana could work in an urban setting? And it was over lunch that we got things going. And of course, the big question was going to be, could we get our congregations that were still doing well, they weren't desperate yet, let me put it that way. Could we get them, they're feeling pretty secure, we're still there, we're not going anywhere. Could we encourage them? Could we invite them? Could we persuade them to take a step out of their comfort zone and do ministry in a different way. So we went to our congregations and we started talking about it. And East Liberty was the congregation that needed the help as soon as possible. They, to our amazement and our delight, said, let's do it. And so we formed an informal cooperative with East Liberty. We talked with then Bishop McCoyd about what we wanted to do to make sure that the Synod was in agreement. And we were pleasantly pleased to get the bishop's support in trying this. And we said, well, we'll work it out as we go. And that's the origins of how we got started.
And what strikes me about that story is the way in which you took a problem or the change in demographics and said, we need to look at this in a new way. That we had an old model that worked for a while, but now a new situation and the change in demographics required you to look at doing ministry, telling the same story, the good news, sharing the love of God in the city, but look, things have changed and we need to do that differently. Is that an accurate read of how things happen? That it's a different model. It's a different model for congregations, and I can understand why that may have caused some discomfort, caused some to come out of their comfort zones and even across community borders and across rivers to say, we need to join hands here.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that our mindset was narrow, I think has always been narrow, is whenever we look at cooperative ministry, we look at geographics and try and link congregations that are next to each other. Well, we immediately took off the table whenever we said we're not going to be geographical based, is any attempt to merger. East Liberty is not going to merge with Duquesne or St. Andrew, so that takes all that fear level off of the table for all of our congregations, saying that's not our job. Our job is to provide stable pastoral ministry so that you folks can then go about and do the ministries to your community. And almost every one of our congregations that are small member congregations, it is the majority of the ministry money goes to pastoral ministry. So they can't afford to do evangelism to their community. They can't afford social ministry issues. They can't afford to step beyond the immediate pastoral ministry because all their funds go into the pastoral ministry package. And as Pastor Beth then with insurances and all those things changing, it was becoming tighter and tighter for congregations to have the facilities and the ability to reach out into their communities and actually do on-site ministries. And so what we've done is we've just said, let's lift that and take that all off the table. Let's sit back and say, how do we provide stable pastoral ministry? And if you're going to compete in the pastoral call process, you have to be at least at minimum synod minimum packages. And so that was the norm. You've got to at least come up with synod minimum packages, and that's what we've strived to grow towards. And so once we're to that point, and once we become at that point where we are not right now, then we're able to sit back and say, okay, how do we continue to evolve and grow? And what's the model really look like? People say, how do you serve 7 congregations? And for us, the model is if First Church downtown, which is in an urban setting downtown, has multiple staff, and they have several services on a Sunday morning. The difference is everyone goes to that one altar. The pastors visit all the same hospitals we do. They've got people living in North Hills, East Hills, South Hills. They're traveling all through the city of Pittsburgh, visiting their members, visiting their shut-ins that are scattered as far as we are. And so we've just said, how do we make this work?
It sounds like you're making it work.
Yep, we'll continue.
More about that after this short break.